Welcome to Deep Thought. It's hard to see the big picture. You know what, other day on a comment on one of my older videos, a young man had made some suggestions. They were good-hearted suggestions on how I could make more money, right? And I thought they were good-hearted, and I told him that, but you know, the way he worded it, it was suggested that I wasn't making money. And I'm like, no, actually, you have no idea how much money I make, right? You know. And I thought it was interesting because he was basing it on a limited vision on what I'm doing on YouTube, right? And I'm like, well, first of all, you don't know how much money I'm making on YouTube. Even though they got some sites that try to track it. You can put your name in and they'll estimate it, which I think is funny because I've never seen it to be accurate. Because I was like, no, I make way more than that. Because they really don't, at the end of the day, they don't know. But, you know, this video isn't to really jump on him. Like I said, you can tell it came from a sincere place. He wasn't trying to really put me down or anything. All right. But I'm going to tell you what, it's hard to see the big picture for a lot of people because one of the things is people only see what's in front of them. Like using that YouTube and money example again, I've seen some people who are detractors of different popular YouTubers and say, oh, they ain't making any money. You know, one YouTuber, they were saying, yeah, he always do these videos from his living room. And I'm looking at it like, how can you tell from a dude's living room how much money he making? That could be that might even be his living room or something. It might be his den, wherever. It's just the space he's making it. The screen can only, like a camera can only take in so much space. You don't know what's behind it. And that's my point about it. People make something and they see very little, right? Like now these were actual detractors. They try to say, hey, Rom's broke. And I'm like, you know what my bank account look like? And this ain't about, like I say, this ain't really about that. Those are just examples, give you an idea. It's hard for a person to see the big picture because, you know, when we're doing our thing and we see people, all we can see is what's right in front of us. And we can try to make assumptions. We can try to say, okay, look at their clothes, their car, and everything, right? But you still don't see everything about them, and it's bigger than money. Because even me, and I got some programs I could tell you how to read somebody in general, but that's just their basic personality. Even then, to find out certain things, like their finances, what their real spiritual beliefs are, what their real political beliefs are, it might be a little bit harder. Because you only have what's right in front of you. You know, there's different types of perception in the world, right? Different types of perception. And I think I did a video talking about the 7 circuits of the brain. Or at least the first ones. It gets complicated as you get up there. But if you take the 7 circuits of the brain, like the first circuit, the lowest circuit is the lizard brain. Lizards only see what's around them, like in the immediate vicinity, right? They don't travel a lot, right? And then you take it up to the insect brain. The insects see a little bit more. But they basically are part of the herd. They part of the group and everything. And then if someone's a bird, they rate it up to, interesting term, the bird brain, right? Their perception is they see the bigger picture. They see everything, right? Like when you analyze in an event in public, right? Like take news events, right? Take news events. A lot of times we see what they're saying on the surface. We're not seeing what's going on in private. Like recently at my the basketball coach at my alma mater got fired, right? And everybody's saying this and that, but my first thought was, okay, there's something that is not being said publicly, right? Because it was kind of an unceremonious firing of someone who's been there a long time. I said, nah. Something else that they're not saying, and usually that's the case. That's one thing. There's always something behind something. Like a lot of times people, they focus too much on the superficial. They think this is it, right? Like they'll look at somebody, like how many people will look at somebody and think, they might see them dressed a certain way and think this is it. Now, they only seeing them at that moment in a certain context, right? Like say you see somebody and they dress like a bum, right? And maybe they're at a situation, like maybe they're someplace, maybe they at some party or something, or some picnic or something where they look very awkward. They just doing something very awkward. And see, some people might make a judgment about that person, right? But you don't see the totality of that person. You don't see the big picture. Because say if that person is an attorney, right? So they're a trial attorney. So yes, they're looking awkward in that position. But then if you see the big picture and see what else they do, they're a champion. They'll go in the courtroom and they're dominant. In fact, that happens with a lot of... I've seen that in some discussions about from clinical psychologists about relationships. They say like a lot of women will push a guy to the side, right? Because they see him in a certain light. But then if they see him in another light, it's like, boom, wait a minute, hold up. This dude is competent. This dude got all of that. But it's hard to see the big picture because all we have to go on is right in front of us. We don't automatically think there's more to this person. Right? We don't really have time to, in all fairness. And it's difficult. It's difficult. That's why, getting back to that original example, that's why I ain't really get mad at the young man, because I'm actually making an effort to hide what I do or any level of success, because I actually live below my means purposely. All right? But it's hard to see that. And there's no shame in it, because really, if you think the average person has too much on their mind to think about the big picture, They don't have to they're not thinking like, okay, what's going on here? What's going on there? What's behind this? Because every time you see something, the surface of something, there's 1,000 things behind it. Here's a good example, good perspective to use. When you meet that person, say you meet a person out in public and they real mean and evil and stuff, right? Now, on the surface, you'll say, oh, this is a mean, evil person, right? Because that's all you got to go on. But the reality is most of the time they're a very nice person, but they just had the day from hell, right? And it's hard to see that because you're only dealing with how they dealing with you, and you're like, shit. How many of us have met a person and, you just didn't like them at first? You were like, man, they're an asshole. They're an asshole. They're mean, whatever, right? And you meet it, that's your initial impression, but you're in some type of social circle, maybe a work environment, where you can see another side of them. So instead of that day from hell, they shoot. Everything is going well that day. They caught all the lights. Just had sex that morning. Shoot. Took care of that cutoff notice. Shoot, they just feeling good. Met somebody new if they didn't have sex that morning. The night before, shoot, they coming in. They like, la, la, la. You like, who's this person? All right? Or, just normally they could be in a good thing, but you don't always see it. And it's hard to see it. And I'm not going to say you have time to always check. But, certain instances, always try to keep that in mind. There's more to it than that. Just in general, keep in mind, because you never know how that could benefit you just by sitting back. Because usually, like, if I've met people and they act all funky with me, I don't really take it personally at that moment, unless it turns out to be something consistent with them. But a lot of times, you catch them someplace else. And I've actually had that so many times. You meet somebody and they mean, but then it was just what they going through that day. In fact, I remember... you don't know what happened, or, and that made me think about when going into my senior year of college, I worked as a intern at a diagnostic probation office, right? The diagnostic probation folks they're the ones who recommended sentencing to judges. Like, somebody's convicted, they'll go in front of this person, the person will take down the information, and then recommend a sentence. But I remember what my mentor there said. right? He said something very interesting. He said, he was telling a client, basically a convicted person. He said, look, when you get sentenced, we can recommend all this, but if you were convicted of stealing a car and that judge come in and the car was stolen that morning, you probably served some time, right? So there's always more behind something. Very interesting, very interesting. Remember, there's always more. Everybody has a story, right? Everybody has a story. They have stuff that you can't see, right? They have stuff that you can't see on the surface. So, and usually, honestly, when I see somebody like that, I don't really try to figure out what their story is, unless I have to deal with them. And usually, I just push them to the side. I say, look, whatever you're dealing with, you deal with it over there, all right? But if you have to deal with it for whatever reason, just keep that in mind. There's more to the story. It's hard to see the big picture. So anyway, something to think about. Peace and blessings.